Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
Former Minnesota Vikings punter, our buddy Chris Kluwe. How you doing, Chris?
Hey, how's it going?
So you're kind of a nerd, right? You get the Warcraft thing going, and you got all these people on the Twitter that follow you, right? Because of that.
Oh yeah, definitely. I own a tabletop miniature gaming store in California. It's a lot of fun.
Nothing wrong with that. I got a guy that was a former rock star, a friend of mine, total nerd, totally into the World of Warcraft stuff. It's a whole other world.
Yes, it is.
It's funny because everyone grows up with a computer in their house nowadays, know, as compared to like 20, 25 years ago where no one really had computers. So I think it's a lot more socially acceptable now.
What was the comparison that you made this past week? Let's start there. With your situation, and real quick for everybody listening, a couple weeks back, Chris had written an article for Deadspin referring to the Minnesota Vikings organization, well, I guess now former organization, because guys like Leslie Frazier are no longer there, as bigots and cowards because of your stance on same-sex marriage, which you're pro for it, and some of the on-field situations that were happening with you and your positions coach. So that's going back. And then this past week you've lawyered up, and right after we had you on, and then you were talking about, I read in an article that you compare your situation to one of like Tim Tebow in the NFL. Explain what you meant by that.
Yeah, well, a lot of people have drawn that comparison, and I think it has merit because what the NFL hates to see is guys talking about something that's not football. And even though me and Tebow are essentially polar opposites in a lot of what we believe in, the fact remains is that Tebow is still a very serviceable backup quarterback in the NFL. There's a lot of not very good backup quarterbacks that he could replace, but teams look at all the other stuff that he brings, and much like my situation, they know that, yeah, there might be some media attention. If they were to pick this guy up, there might be some questions, and for head coaches, they just hate that. They don't want anyone talking about their team, and so they're like, you know what, we may get someone who's not quite as good, but we're going to deal with it just so we don't have to deal with this other stuff.
Yeah, I thought of you last weekend when the Patriots punter went down, and I probably couldn't have also thought of a more unlikely team to reach out to you than the Patriots. Did you?
Pretty sure Belichick would kill me on the first day.
Why do you think he'd kill you, Chris? Just because of being outspoken and not being able to play by those Belichick rules in New England?
Yeah, I think. You look at what happened when Chad Johnson, i.e. Chad Ochocinco, went there, and he did the whole "I'm not going to tweet anymore, I'm not going to do anything," and it really looked like it was affecting his play on the field because he couldn't be himself. So.
Last week when we talked to you, you hadn't heard anything yet as far as any lawsuit goes coming from your article, but now you've lawyered up. What made you decide to do so?
Well, I think it's funny that people automatically have this negative connotation with lawyering up. And the thing is that the Vikings announced that they are doing an independent investigation, which is a really good sign, and I intend on cooperating fully. But anytime you meet with other lawyers to either give testimony or to, describe a series of events, it is always a smart idea to have your own lawyer. Because that's how you save yourself from getting in trouble later on by saying something or referring to something that you may not have meant to. That's a lawyer's job, is to look out for you. So the thing with the Vikings doing an independent investigation, I'm actually really excited about because I think they actually do want to get to the bottom of this. They want to get to the truth. And like I said, I'm fully confident in my statements and what I've said. And, hopefully in a couple of weeks from now, all this will be resolved.
On the WadeFord.com hotline, former Vikings punter Chris Kluwe, in that investigation that the Vikings are doing, and that was announced, I think, well over a week, 2 weeks ago, have they reached out to you to ask you any questions?
Yeah, I'm scheduled to meet with them next week. We tried to get it set up for this past weekend, but the timing just didn't work out. So, I think coming up next week is when we're scheduled to meet.
Are you going to hold back at all, or are you going to totally bury the guys in there and stick to your guns?
Well, I mean, I'm going to tell them what happened. I'm going to tell, here's what was said. Here are witnesses, and I'm going to push really hard for them to keep those witnesses anonymous, because the fact remains is that in the NFL, you can get blacklisted for being attached to a situation like this.
Mm-hmm.
Coaches will look at it and be like, oh, that guy broke the locker room code, or he snitched on his teammates, and it's like, well, no, that guy just happened to be there and overheard something, and why should he get punished for something that he was no part of? So I think I'm hopefully they are aware of that, of the realities of the NFL, because it is something that happens.
Chris, do you think being in a state like Minnesota that and I assume this is being done there, the impartial investigation and everything else, is it an advantage for the things you say and what you do that you're doing this in Minnesota? Because Minnesota's been very applicable, very non-hostile to these kinds of things.
Right, exactly, and yeah, I think it is good that it's taking place in Minnesota. But I think the goal is eventually that one day every state in the union would have the ability, people would have the ability to go say, hey, I got fired for this, and have legal recompense, because it's not right to be fired from your job simply due to speaking out on an issue. And that's the thing about free speech is that you should be able to raise awareness of social issues, no matter what those social issues are, no matter what side of them you're on.
If you could go back to the day before you submitted this article and it became just a phenomenon across the nation, would you release it again?
Oh, yeah, I'd definitely release it again. This is something that I knew I was going to tell this story, because for me it's important, not just because it happened to me, but to show that this is something that happens across our country on a daily basis. There are still multiple states in America where you can be fired from your job simply because of your sexuality. And that's not the basis of a stable society. That's not the basis of freedom.
Talking with Chris Kluwe, former Vikings punter. So it's not really necessarily about the message anymore, even though that's still important. Side note, I totally agree with you on a personal level, but it's more about being able to still be in any work environment and speak your mind. That's really what it's turned into, correct?
Yeah, well, that's part of it, and like I said, the essential part of it is the fact that making people aware that this is something that happens, this is something that goes on, and is this the type of country that we want to live in, where all we think about is money, all we think about is your job, and that's all that defines you, because frankly, that's not really the type of country I want to live in. I don't think that's very healthy if your sole concern is making money all the time, and you get punished for speaking out on social issues because of it.
Well, get ready for the texts or the tweets. They're going to come in. Love it or leave it, Chris. Get the hell out if you don't like America. You're going to get that, right?
Exactly. Well, and if I could actually address that real quick, I love that point, because it somehow implies that there's, that America is the greatest thing that has or will ever exist. And it's you're perfectly capable of loving your country and also wanting it to be better. I'd say that's actually how more people should approach the viewpoint of our society, is that, yeah, we do have a great society. We have probably the best society in the world right now. That doesn't mean that it is perfect. We should always be striving to improve it.
Yeah, I got you. All right, Chris.
Yeah. Hey, I've got a non-sports story, just a non-sports question for you. Looking at your bio, noticing your birthday, did the term "Happy Birthday, Merry Christmas" just make you go into a death spiral when you were a kid growing up?
Yeah, it's get all the presents in one lump sum, and usually it's not as much because it's all at once.
You get half as much, don't you? Parents can say whatever you want, but kids born on December 24th, you get screwed in the end as far as birthday and Christmas goes.
Yeah, pretty much that whole area, like the 23rd through the 27th or so. It's people are just like, oh yeah, I'll just hit both things at once. Here's your combination gift.
Just blame it on your childhood, Chris. Anything else that comes your way, just say that you were, mentally abused because of having a December 24th birthday. That's all you have to do.
I didn't get enough toys as a kid.
All right, brother, hit you up on Twitter, and we'll get you on sooner than later. We always love having you on. You're a great guest, and I love to chit-chat with you, all right?
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, we'll see you. Great guy.
Yeah.
Love talking about it. Love the story. I get the feeling that you just absolutely disagree with him 100% with a lot of things.
No. I think he's at a point, he's very idealistic, and that's wonderful. Things don't get changed and done without idealistic people. But in reality in the corporate world, you have every right not to have people working for you professing things that you don't agree with.
Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.